Welcome everyone to this special online partners forum, which will primarily focus today on Queensland's biosecurity strategy. My name's Kirsten Phillips. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Engagement for Biosecurity Queensland. So the webinar today will take about an hour and a half, and it is being recorded so that we can share it with partners who have been unable to attend. For the purposes of this forum, we have the audio switched off. So if you would like to ask questions, it will be through the chat function. We do have some time for a short Q&A session where we will track those questions and endeavour to answer those during that session. If we're not able to answer all of those questions today, we will aim to follow up out of session. So just before we get into the main part of today on the strategy, we know some people are still joining us. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to talk quickly about the Biosecurity Mates Ambassador Program that was recently launched. There's been some considerable interest in this from our partner organisations. So we just thought this would be an opportunity to highlight that initiative. So we have 6 Biosecurity Mate Ambassadors who have been appointed for Queensland. The primary focus of the ambassadors is to raise awareness of biosecurity with a wider audience. So their aim is to engage with stakeholders across the biosecurity system. And in particular, we're looking at opportunities where they can engage with audiences that we wouldn't normally reach. So BQ will be supporting these ambassadors to attend a number of events during the year. If you would like to know more about the program or make contact with any of our ambassadors, you can reach us at biosecurity.mates@daf.qld.gov.au, and that's just been popped in the chat for everyone as well. So please reach out to us through that address. I know some number of our ambassadors are online today, and welcome and thanks for joining us. Before we get into the strategy, we're just going to play you a short video that highlights why our ambassadors are so passionate about biosecurity. Thanks, team.
I'm passionate in biosecurity, particularly around rabbits in my role with the Darling Downs Moreton Rabbit Board and making Queensland a place that is free as it can be from the impacts of rabbits.
In terms of biosecurity, I'm passionate about empowering the community to take practical actions to help mitigate against biosecurity threats.
I'm passionate about livestock biosecurity training and on-the-ground support to ensure producers have the information and skills to manage biosecurity risks.
I'm passionate about supporting Queensland aquaculturists in protecting their farms against potential biosecurity threats.
I'm passionate about biosecurity to get our cultural knowledge and our traditional knowledge out and to work together to protect our country and protect it from the biosecurity threats facing our country.
So that's just a short snippet from our ambassadors. And like I said, if you need to reach out to us at all to engage with our ambassadors, please do through that email address provided. I'd now like to hand over to Deputy Director General and Queensland Chief Biosecurity Officer, Rachel Chay, to speak about the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, KP. Before I commence, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we're meeting today, which it will be all over Queensland. I'm coming to you from Meanjin, the lands of the Yugara and Turrbal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be joining us online today. So welcome to our online Partners Forum. It's exciting to be able to come together, even in a virtual space, and walk you through the new Queensland Biosecurity Strategy. I was keen to kick off today with a bit of a trip down memory lane. It can be incredibly easy, and I know I suffer from it, to be caught up in the here and now and the challenges that are right in front of us. But it is important for us to acknowledge and reflect on how biosecurity has changed in Queensland over the past 17 years. Now, I consider myself as still being a newbie to the space, but I know a lot of you online have been in this space for those 17 years and perhaps beyond. It's important to note from this nice picture we have on screen that the road has certainly not been straight. and that we acknowledge the efforts of everybody, both within Biosecurity Queensland and all our critical partners in at least moving in the right direction. So when you think back to 2007 and how different the landscape was, it does help us put it into perspective. The first iPhone was introduced in 2007, and I don't know about you, but I couldn't imagine it being far away. It's always in my hot little hand, and it feels like it's been around a lot longer. Social media only just started to take off then, and as someone very firmly in middle age, I'm grateful that social media wasn't around earlier in my life. And the mainstream apps we all use on a daily basis were only just starting to emerge. Other technologies, which for us includes our lab testing abilities and the sophistication of those, the use of drones, and of course artificial intelligence have all advanced considerably in that time. Our social context has also changed with global events such as COVID-19, instigating permanent and tangible changes to how we live, work and interact with each other. Who would have thought, I imagine most of you back in the day, would never have considered that we would be able to run a biosecurity incident state control centre almost completely virtually. But it happened almost overnight during the pandemic, which shows that we can adapt to challenges we face. Sometimes we just need a nudge. There are a number of key milestones on our roadmap. Notably, the most recent significant impacts have been around investment. As you can see, the Queensland Government has provided some considerable resource packages to ensure ongoing capability and capacity development, but the work in this space continues. So our most recent and exciting milestone has been the release of Queensland's Biosecurity Strategy 2024 to 2029. This strategy establishes a framework for Queensland's biosecurity system aimed at addressing the ever-increasing amount and complexity of biosecurity risks we face. The focus is on how we can work collaboratively or continue to work collaboratively to safeguard Queensland's industries, economy, environment, biodiversity and social amenity. This is an important point to recognise. The impacts of biosecurity threats are far-reaching across tourism, development, supply chain, community events, schools, native flora and fauna, and of course our critical agriculture industry can all be affected by biosecurity incidents. It's about ensuring that we do have an all-hazards approach, which encompasses both endemic as well as exotic biosecurity risks. The current strategy builds on the previous 2018 to 2023 strategy, which established or further embedded the shared culture of biosecurity in Queensland. While BQ plays a leadership role in the biosecurity system, and why I'm ageing rapidly, this strategy is very much about the entire system and all of you as stakeholders are contributors to better biosecurity. This strategy was again co-designed in partnership with stakeholders, and I thank all of you who contributed, especially the members of the writing group. Members of this group provided valuable input for the strategy and a lot of hours, but your work has also helped to guide a number of projects that will support strategy implementation. I also thank our wonderful BQMAC members for their oversight and input. I met with BQMAC last week and I look forward to working with the Council on a number of initiatives which will support the biosecurity system to continue to mature and evolve. Considering the drivers that impact the biosecurity system is critical. As you know, this strategy was a refresh of our previous framework, and the main drivers and core principles of biosecurity haven't changed much, thank goodness. I was reminded of this recently when the 2008 Queensland Biosecurity Strategy was shared with me by former CBO, Chief Biosecurity Officer Ron Glanville. Reading that document made me realise that the challenges have been broadly similar over that time. However, the system itself is evolving and there are things changing rapidly around us that affect how we face those challenges. Some examples, and I've already touched on these, is the widespread implementation of advanced technologies like drones, AI, and genomic sequencing for real-time monitoring and rapid response. COVID has also created more focused attention on zoonoses and raised awareness of tools such as movement controls, PCT tests, and vaccination, but has also affected how people view government intervention to biosecurity incidents. We also have significant population growth. We all love living in Queensland, so why doesn't everybody else? So we're seeing population growth and urban expansion, which increases the interface between human activities and natural ecosystems, which of course heightens biosecurity risks. These rapidly changing drivers that you see on screen are why we need to be able to coordinate and adapt across our biosecurity system. The Queensland Strategy identifies key actions across 6 themes. The first of those is collaborative governance and leadership. This theme is focused on establishing frameworks and procedures that drive collective and collaborative partnerships, which are inclusive, transparent, and aligned at all levels. Number 2, every Queenslander plays their part. Promoting positive behaviour change across the biosecurity system is critical to success, and this theme is focused on how we can achieve this through a broad range of programs. Number 3 is empowered to act. This theme is focused on ensuring we have the skilled workforce and capability we need to support the system both now and into the future. Coming in at number 4 is innovation and intelligence. The timely adoption of innovation and intelligence is needed to ensure we are ready to respond to emerging trends and risks. Number 5, valuing and building on our investments. Continued investment is needed, which I touched on in my introduction, across the biosecurity system, and this includes the development of a sustainable funding model. And last but not least is response effectiveness and preparedness. Ensuring we are prepared to respond to biosecurity incidents is critical. We need to build this capacity within the biosecurity system, but also across the wider incident management system in Queensland. The Queensland Strategy has strong alignment to the National Biosecurity Strategy around themes and key outcomes, but provides the Queensland context. This slide is designed to show you that alignment of the themes across the 2 strategies. Just as Queensland has that cascade from national to state, we would encourage our partners in developing their plans, whether that be industry, local government or individual producers, to consider system-wide alignment. In relation to the national strategy, an implementation plan is well developed and all state jurisdictions through the National Biosecurity Committee are committed to sharing the cost of implementation for the first year. More consultation on this plan is due to be released shortly. There are 5 guiding principles outlined in the strategy for all of us as partners in the system to consider. These are trust, collaborate, participate, innovate, and future focused. Of these, the one I think will define our success is the ability to collaborate. As biosecurity partners, there are 4 actions that we can all commit to that will help to move our biosecurity system forward. Collaborative decision making, sharing of expertise and knowledge, engaging on community action, which includes encouraging citizen science, and building and committing to trusted relationships. So thank you for this brief walk through the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy. To provide us more insights on shared responsibility and taking a systems-based approach, I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker for today, Stephen Petrus from the Nous Group. Stephen is a principal at the Nous Group, where he leads the Strategy and Implementation Practice Division. He works with government, industry and community on strategy across many sectors, including agriculture, environment, water and emergency management, with a particular focus on the development of sector or system-wide strategies designed to win broad-based support. This includes the recent development of the Victorian Biosecurity Strategy. He did also study at the University of Queensland, my alma mater. So, regardless of where he currently resides, we claim him as one of our own. Welcome, Stephen. So much looking forward to your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Rachel. And can I say that I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm going to ask my colleague to share some slides. Can I just check when they're up? Rachel, can you see those? Wonderful. Okay.
Yes, Stephen, we've got them.
Yep. Got them. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for. I really appreciate having the chance to speak to you today. As Rachel said, I work widely across strategy and implementation, but particularly most recently in the emerging challenge of how to design and implement system-wide strategies. Rachel pointed out that I've been working on the Victorian Biosecurity Strategy most of last year, and it covers, as you wouldn't be surprised to hear that it covers much of the same ground, but have also worked significantly on related strategies in the emergency services sector on how emergency service organisations can work together much more effectively in terms of the all hazards, all agencies approach in the light of much more frequent intense events. In the primary industry sector, I've worked on supporting the peak bodies of the dairy industry, established the dairy industry plan, worked extensively in water and natural resource management, where it's always about how can we support working together, collaboration across a system. So with that in mind, I thought I would just offer some key considerations then. So you've just released the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy. It's very strong. Rachel's talked about how the implementation is well underway. I thought that what would be most useful in this short time with you is just to talk through some key considerations as you think through the implementation of system-wide strategies. 3 in particular. System-wide strategies about working together, but there are different ways to think about this. We talk through terms like shared responsibility, collective action, interoperability, partnerships, collaboration. They're all key. They've all got a crucial role to play in the way we think about working together to deliver on biosecurity outcomes, but they're all subtly different. But it's worth just picking those apart a little bit. It's helpful to understand when those different ideas are most useful as we think about implementation. Second point I want to make is implementing strategy is hard. You'll be perhaps not surprised to hear that most strategies fall short of their aspirations, and system-wide strategies even harder. So working out how to get traction in delivering system-wide strategy is key, and focus particularly is important, as I'll touch on in a minute. And the third point is there's an increasingly important role for the enabling organisation to enable successful implementation of system-wide strategies. We increasingly describe them as system stewards, organisations that have some stewardship or enabling role to help the system deliver joint outcomes. It's an important role, but it's important to get it right. And mostly getting it right is about being very clear about how that particular organisation adds value into the wider system. So I thought I'll just unpack those a little bit, and hopefully there's something in each of these or across the 3 that's useful as you think about how do we implement the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy together effectively. So thinking about system-wide strategy, it's sometimes interesting to think there's only 4 types of strategies, or at least 4 levels of strategies. Most of us in our day-to-day organisations operate at business level, i.e. we're working in an organisation or a business, and it's all about how do we improve performance and what do we focus on in terms of new services, new products, or some variation of that. There's program and functional level strategy, which contributes to our broader organisational aspirations. There's multi-business or corporate level strategy, which is all about how do the bits of the organisation, the businesses, contribute more than the sum of the parts. And then above that, there's system or sector level strategy. And the reason to tease this out a little bit is because they each ask quite different questions. And at the heart of system and sector level strategy is, in the end, how can the different parts of this system best work together to achieve system or sector outcomes that sort of frames much of what we're trying to achieve. So thinking about that, I thought I would step through on the next slide. So this is just, so without promoting this, but this is the 5 goals from the Victorian Biosecurity Strategy. I only put these up to sort of test through the different ways working together can look in different parts of the biosecurity system. So if we'll go back one slide, Yolita. So looking through the sort of the 3 middle goals, sometimes biosecurity is complex. People struggle with the breadth and the scope of biosecurity. Sometimes it's useful to think about it in terms of systems within systems. And that middle column is there's at least 3 systems within the biosecurity system. There's the prevention and mitigation system, where it's all about making biosecurity everybody's business. That's where we work to mobilise coordinated, sustained action and behavioural change across the system, based on a better understanding of biosecurity risks and responsibilities. You've described as every Queenslander playing their part. And if we step forward one, this is particularly where shared responsibility plays. So shared responsibility is contested. There's lots of versions of what we precisely mean by shared responsibility. But if we understand it as everyone who has a stake in the system playing their role, then it's particularly relevant here in the prevention and mitigation part of the system. We're all here concerned with how do we increase awareness, overcome complacency, get more traction, encourage more people to do their bit, embrace practices that reduce the biosecurity risk. But you can think about a second system if we keep stepping through. The response, preparedness and response system, i.e. once we have an event. Here our aspirations are largely about broadening the base for preparedness and response with more frequent, more concurrent, more intense biosecurity and other emergencies. How do we draw more people in to the support of preparedness and response and more institutions? How do we build stronger partnerships with people and organisations ahead of emergencies for coordinated action when every minute counts? And here you might say the working together leans a little bit more towards coordination and interoperability then. How do we work together, build networks and relationships so that we're best placed to respond when it counts, but also how do we build the supporting systems relationships to enable response? And then you might think in the third part of sort of third system within system, and these kind of loosely map to the invasion curve. You might say once we've got once weeds and pests become established, here we're in the world of reducing the impacts of established weeds and pests through local action. Here it's all about management that outlines priorities for supporting local collective action on established weeds and pests, bringing together participants to achieve sustainable long-term whole of landscape change. And here we're probably leaning a little bit more to local collective action, or the notion that in the end it's community and industry groups and action led by industry and community groups that makes the most difference here, but not without support, not in partnership with government. You can't get traction on what are hard problems without long-term commitments. And here the working together looks a little bit more like support for local and industry action, whether that's expertise, skills, information, encouragement, creating the mechanisms around sustained whole of landscape change. So there's 3 subtle variations on what does working together mean. There's a couple more on either end of this on this diagram. broadly, as we talk about partnerships and strengthening ways to work together, industry, community and government, setting priorities, focusing on delivery of outcomes, we're in the world of partnerships and collaboration. And as I hinted earlier, over in the enablers side, we're in the world where we're talking about how can the system steward, whoever that is, support system-wide action and enable all those who operate in the system to play their role in reducing biosecurity risks and their harmful consequences. We're in the world of system stewardship. So sort of the point here is just to say, it's all about working together. There's lots of little variations and nuances in working together. They're all, of course, highly relevant to the way we tackle improving biosecurity outcomes, but we can get a bit of inspiration from different versions of it as we think through delivering biosecurity outcomes. On the next slide, I've just thought, well, so where might that matter as we implement the biosecurity strategy? Well, then there's slightly different logics for how we'll work together for different parts of the system then. I've just shared one here. This is some work we've been doing in another jurisdiction, supporting interoperability between two emergency service organisations. What's the logic for enabling that? There's the joint outcome we're all working towards, in this case, saving lives, creating safer communities, minimising the impact of emergencies. Underneath that are the key elements of interoperability. A nice way to break it down is working together when it's about interoperability is about paying attention to the right governance, the right capability and training, the right systems, data and technology, the right assets and facilities, the right policies and procedures, and working through where to focus effort in terms of improving interoperability. Underneath that, though, it's not just about that. Interoperability is not just about landing those things. It's also paying some attention to the key enablers and in some instances, when they work against us, barriers to collaboration, to working together. These play out in most of these systems. The crucial ones are role clarity, trust and parity, which means organisations of roughly even size, committed leaders, skilled individuals, sufficient investment, supporting cultures. I'll return to this in a minute in a bit more detail, but just to make the point here, working together, lots of different variations on how to think about working together to deliver biosecurity outcomes, different ways then to work through how we're going to manage implementation. Next slide. So that's first consideration. Second consideration is just to sort of flesh out this notion that implementing strategy is hard. There's quite a famous book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. If you did a Google search on it, it would come up in some of the top 10 books on how to design and implement strategy. Its premise, and I don't quite know whether I believe this, but I believe the intent of it. But its premise is that every year organisations spend more than $30 billion on strategy creation, and 80% of those strategies fail. And by failing, they typically mean don't deliver on our aspirations. There's lots of reasons for that, but interestingly, the main reason, or often the main reason, strategies fail is the pull of business as usual, of too many goals. Goals are unclear and no accountability for goals. Investing in strategy and strategic effort is hard. It requires intent. It requires discretionary effort, often to the extent that everything else in our lives is pulling us away from that. The next crisis, what's on the top of my to-do list today, new challenges and new issues that I'm required to manage that are more pressing. To the extent they dominate our lives, they pull attention away from strategy and strategy implementation. The key way through this, it's tricky, but a key way through it is focusing on key priorities. The shorter and the sharper you can be in terms of where we focus our effort, the more chance you have of beating out BAU activities, getting sufficient attention to delivering on our strategic aspirations. It's a bit more than that, though. It's also finding a way to get sort of light but constant attention. on what we want to deliver. If you can find light but constant attention on the sharp selection of key priorities to get traction on, it's the way through business as usual. As we were developing the Victorian Biosecurity Strategy, you'll know this all too well, but even the biggest supporters of biosecurity and biosecurity strategy would point out the challenge of giving sufficient attention to biosecurity when you're also grappling with, say, on farm, with labour supply issues, with rising costs, with everything else in a challenging, in holding any challenging role or job. Navigating through that is important. There's a nice quote at the bottom there. When you work on that many goals, you actually work on none of them because the amount of energy put into each one is so small, it's meaningless. So focus, focus, focus. Now that's strategy generally. This is a book about strategy generally. If we turn to implementing strategy at system scale, well, it's harder than that depends on partnerships and collaboration. Then it's harder again. As I mentioned before, this is a bit of a flesh out of the framework we typically use to think about if you want to get traction when you depend on partnerships and collaboration, what do you need to pay attention to? At the top, of course, mutual goals, purpose. We've got to agree. We've got to jointly agree on our aspirations. That's a great start. But then there's lots of other things to pay attention to in terms of enablers, and sometimes they work out as barriers. In the rest of this diagram, I'll call out two. I'll call out role clarity, the number 5 on this list. So often, lack of clarity around roles, my roles and responsibilities vis-a-vis others, is the key. Can be the enabler if well done, but if not well done, can be a key barrier to action, and often does surface to the top as you think through how are we going to get traction on implementing this change at system scale. Attention to role clarity, crucial. The other one to pay attention to, or just to dwell on briefly, is the first line, trust and parity, power asymmetries. When we're trying to coordinate effort across a whole lot of organisations, groups of different scales, it's tricky. There's lots of challenge in larger, better resourced organisations working with smaller, less resource organisations. It's often subtle, but often at the heart of the challenge of getting traction through partnerships and collaborations is the trickiness of working through that, paying attention to that, and ensuring people come to conversations looking for the opportunities to understand each other's positions more effectively, how we can complement each other's skills, requirements, needs, is often underrated and important to getting traction in terms of implementation. Now, the next slide says, so this might help. This is just a nice way to think about how to get traction then. And it's the story about the collaboration sweet spot, which says, if we're relying on collaboration and partnerships to get traction, there's a sweet spot, the sweet spot between too little collaboration and too much collaboration. Rarely are you in the sweet spot. Usually we're at sort of one side of this spectrum. If we're on the too little collaboration side, typically you see it in the world around us in terms of lots of duplication of effort, lots of reinventing the wheel, lots of services that you think should be lined up, not really lining up. It's confusing. We miss opportunities, unexploited, develop too slowly. All signs of too little collaboration. If we're over on the too much collaboration side, what that looks like is lots of overworked people, leaders, consumed by coordinating with everybody. Sometimes that leads to frustration, conflict, or at least challenging environments in which we trying to work out how we're going to work together, who does what, who owns what. and sometimes it can mean we lose sight of some of the individual values that different organisations and people bring to collaboration. Too much collaboration. So hitting the sweet spot is actually mostly about a rule of thumb which says just focus on the, say, 20 to 30% of collaboration opportunities and forget the rest. Put all your energy into the handful of key 20 to 30% of collaboration opportunities in terms of working together to deliver, in this case, biosecurity outcomes. It's another version of how do you focus effort on what really matters to get traction, and looking for the sweet spot, the right amount of collaboration is sometimes a really useful way to think through it. If we can go to the next slide. I just thought I'd put this Australian Dairy Plan output. So the Australian Dairy Plan, which was produced 2 or 3 years ago, I would say with some of it's been delivered well, other parts not so well, like I guess most system or sector scale strategies. But one of the nice things I think we can get some inspiration from is the nice way that it's, in terms of thinking about focus, it said let's just focus on 3 goals. Of course, there are lots of other supporting actions, but just focusing on 3 goals and the supporting measures, i.e. just 3 supporting measures through which to track direct effort in terms of a lot of getting traction on a lot of initiatives and action. The 3 goals here for the whole dairy industry. It's about profitability. It's about confidence. We want to increase the confidence in the industry from farmers and processors. It's about unity. It's about how we work together and find ways of building this industry together. 3 goals, 3 measures. There's quite a lot of thinking about measures, which largely says the trick to good measures is not to have too many of them. Too often plans have hundreds of measures that no one ever looks at. A better strategy is to be very clear about what we're trying to achieve, have the handful of measures that help us make sense of how we're going, and then use those to make changes, to learn, to focus effort. Fewer measures, more effective. A little bit more on this sort of theme of this second consideration. How do you get traction on challenging strategies, particularly system-wide strategies? Focus. Next slide. So that's 2. The third thing I thought I would just pay a little bit of attention to is a notion of an enabling organisation. Over the last, perhaps a decade, might be slightly more, but particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, many parts of the public sector are increasingly seeing their role as less and less about the delivery of programs and initiatives, although it's still core, and more about how do we coordinate effort across a whole system. What's the way that we can help all those in the system achieve joint outcomes? Now, there's some really nice thinking from a group called the Institute for Government that sort of described this phenomena some time ago. It described this as the rise of system stewardship, and it talked about how it sort of describes new roles for different parts of government. As system stewards, where you're trying to support the overall functioning of a system where you have limited control, the things you'll pay attention to are things like keeping the attention on and supporting people in crafting the goals, objectives, priorities of the whole system. Paying attention to where you can get some traction or some supporting others to deliver outcomes through incentives, principles, standards, means of engagement. Much more attention to that. Finding ways of getting feedback, being really engaged in thinking about the performance of the whole system and how we can better understand the extent to which the system is delivering on joint outcomes, and then when challenged or when there are opportunities to improve the whole of system performance, responding in all sorts of ways. Now, not all parts of society have embracing this, but certainly those parts, wherever you see lots of people, groups, organisations engaged in trying to deliver something substantial, working together to deliver it, there's increasingly an organisation who's playing this enabling system stewardship role. Biosecurity is an obvious example of it, but so is the related areas of emergency management, natural resource management, and areas like education and health too, for those of you who are familiar with those. Now, I say government, it doesn't have to be government, but typically the organisation that steps up to play this role does so because it has some of the levers to enable system-wide action, whether that's policy levers, financial levers, regulatory levers. So it's often a part of government that's playing the role of enabling of system stewardship. Now, if we turn to the next slide. So what does that really look like? So I'm returning to this original slide of this 4 levels of strategy: system, multi-business, corporate, business, program, functional. And that's because the place to get some inspiration for a system steward in terms of how it can be as effective as it possibly can is in this multi-business corporate level type of strategy. So if there's only 4 types of strategy, the multi-business corporate level strategy usually asks, how can I add value to my wider organization, my wider complex organization that has lots of parts to it? How do I add value? So we're switching that around and saying, if I'm thinking about the whole system, the whole sector, a sector where we're encouraging the whole system to better work together to achieve system outcomes, how do I add value? Or how does my organization add value in order to enable that to happen? And that's important because, as we talked about earlier, when we're working together, when we're talking about partnerships, when we're talking about collaboration, one of the crucial enablers and or barriers that can be the undoing of success is role clarity. And so often you see some messiness in clarifying the roles and responsibilities of different parts of the system, and particularly all of those of us who are trying to achieve good outcomes and the organisation that's playing a little bit more of the enabler, system steward role. The key to that is to get some inspiration from the way you think about adding value in strategy more generally, which is outlined a little bit on the next slide. So it's kind of interesting that it's really only 6 generic ways you can add value into a wider system or a wider organisation. You can be an expert coordinator. You can be responsible for helping all those in the system produce whole of system products, crafting the strategy, crafting policy frameworks, crafting budget submissions, for example. You can be a standard setter. You can be the organisation that sets the standards, sector-wide standards for better outcomes. You can be advisory in the sense that you think, look, there's some really important capability. Perhaps it's sophisticated expert advice. It doesn't make sense to spread that through the whole system. Let's hold that centrally and offer it to everyone involved in the system. Can be service provision, where once again it makes sense to deliver that centrally for the economies of scale. It can be organising, coordinating the cross-cutting projects, drawing people from across the system into time-bound projects that support system outcomes. And it can be advocacy, being the champion for new or improved processes or practices across the organisation. And in here is a little bit of the inspiration. If you're thinking of, in terms of, okay, if I'm going to play a more substantial role in the stewarding, enabling of system-wide outcomes for biosecurity in Queensland, what's the key ways in which I'm going to add value? This offers a little bit of inspiration for where to find that. Now, as you read through the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy, obviously, just as Rachel was talking about it earlier, many of, or some of those key objectives play to this. For example, the the focus on how do we build skills, how do we pay attention to capability and capacity gaps in the biosecurity system, how do we set up the incentives and the programs and initiatives to support that. That's clearly something best done from the centre or from an enabler, a key way to add value. That's my last slide. So I might just, Yolita, if you can just step up to the top. And then the next one. Well, I quickly summarise. So hopefully there's something in that in terms of thinking through implementation challenges. System-wide strategy is about working together, but there's lots of different ways to think about this. Implementing strategy is hard. Focus is the way to get traction. There's this important enabling role, but the enabling role is all about being clear about how we're adding value. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Very helpful, and we hope that the partners online found that helpful. We wanted to make this an opportunity for us all to learn from the expert around how we take the strategy, the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy, and start some really important doing. So that was the genesis for bringing along an expert such as Stephen to the fore. So I'm not seeing any obvious questions in the chat, which is also completely okay. We are recording this session, so if you did want to go back and or reflect on the information Stephen's given us, because there's certainly a lot to unpack in there, then that will be available after the fact. So again, a massive thank you, Stephen. Very much appreciate your expertise and assistance. We are really excited about our strategy, but we are also super excited about actually doing and getting on with this collaborative partnership that will make the system in Queensland highly successful. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So KP, just checking in, it's back to me, right?
Back to you, which was a lovely segue, Rachel, into the next steps of the strategy. So I think Stephen has laid really great foundations there for you to talk about what's next.
Fantastic. Thanks, KP. I always rely on my team, to those online, to keep me in order. So it was important that I check in to make sure I wasn't completely ruining the webinar for you all. So as KP said, Stephen's talk was to set us up for success and to set us up for next steps. So just to give you a bit of an update, so BQMAC, so our Biosecurity Queensland Ministerial Advisory Council met last week to discuss its approach to implementation of the strategy. Now, that's not to say that BQMAC is responsible for implementation of the strategy, but what they are responsible for is holding me accountable from a Biosecurity Queensland perspective to implementing actions pertaining to the strategy. So what were we talking about at that meeting? It reflected on what had worked well last time in the last strategy and what might not be worth repeating. So we are constantly trying to make sure we're taking lessons from the previous strategy to make the next one even better and more successful to achieve, obviously, critically, the outcomes for Queensland. So Biosecurity Queensland, local governments, industry partners, community and environmental groups, research bodies and other partners, of which there are a lot, will already be starting to take actions that will help us move our biosecurity system towards the lofty goals we have set for each of the strategy themes. BQMAC discussed how important it is to share and celebrate biosecurity research and activities more widely so that the benefits can be extended. We are in the early stages of planning for how we might do this, but I expect it will include more regular showcases online over the life of the strategy. So hopefully this forum will be useful to our partners, and certainly doesn't replace us getting together face to face, but allows us to keep you updated more in real time than coming together in person allows. BQMAC also discussed identifying the highest priority strategic opportunities and unmet needs for each theme so it can prioritise, promote, enable and facilitate action on them. My team have already identified some projects we will pursue in the interim, and they include a deeper environmental scan, providing more clarity on roles and responsibilities in the system, and targeting efforts to behaviour change, the people piece that will address the highest priority biosecurity risks. To support you, our important partners in the Queensland Biosecurity System, in considering how your organisation is contributing in line with the Queensland Biosecurity Strategy, my team have developed a template which will be emailed to all registered partners following the forum. This template will enable you to reflect on the actions you are involved in that align with the strategy themes and whether sharing these would extend the benefits to others in the biosecurity system. It will also provide an opportunity to reflect on the gaps and opportunities that we could address with potential future initiatives aligned to the themes in the strategy. This is a reflection tool to help encourage your thinking about the strategy and how you or your organisation or could contribute to improving the biosecurity system, which is why we're all here. If you're willing to send it in to BQ, there is some contact details on the template, which will also help inform the implementation of the strategy. But again, that is not required, simply if we want to create this pool of wisdom and also actions that are going on across the system. Next financial year, we will hold a more in-depth partners forum to help prioritise actions under the strategy, so later this calendar year. I believe, anyway. I hope he's not giving me weird looks. And we are committed to keeping you updated on the work that aligns to the strategy, as well as the wider work of BQ through our regular partners email update. As part of this approach, we always welcome information and updates from our partners on work they are undertaking that supports positive change within the biosecurity system in Queensland. So please don't hesitate to reach out, particularly on initiatives that have the potential to engage others working in the biosecurity space, so that we can all be aligned and we're not duplicating or triplicating the work in a really busy environment. So that's it from me. We are back to
me, Rachel.
KPO, I think, aren't we? Yes.
Yes. So thanks, Rachel, for that summary. We do have now the task of going through our annual biosecurity partners survey. So at each of our annual forums, we do a survey to evaluate the partnership within Queensland's biosecurity system. So this is about partnerships across the system. So for those who weren't with us on our inaugural journey in 2017, during the development of the strategy, so the 2018 to 2023 strategy, all partners voted on which 5 metrics should be used to monitor progress. So those 5 metrics were clarity of purpose and objectives, partners demonstrate mutual trust and respect, clarity of roles and responsibilities, empowering people to take responsibility and act, partnership, collaboration to achieve goals. So we've made significant progress over years advancing how we work together based on these 5 metrics. And the results are showing our collective effort in improving partnerships over time. So what we'd like to do now is have you vote on how you think the system has fared against those metrics. So we have a QR code that's on screen. We also have the link that's been popped in the chat. Now, just to highlight, it is only our partners who should be voting in this. I know there are some of our Biosecurity Queensland staffing team online, but for the purpose of this survey, it is for our partners outside of BQ to vote. So if you can use that QR code or use the link in the chat to vote, there are 5 questions that need to be answered as part of that survey. So hopefully you can all access that. So for those 5 questions, we want you to rate how well the partners demonstrate mutual trust and respect. In the partnership, how clear is the sense of purpose and objectives? Rate how clear the sense of roles and responsibility of people in the partnership is. Rate how effective the partnership is in empowering people to take responsibility and act. And then rate your satisfaction with how the partnership works together. So how collaboration works to achieve goals. So if everyone could just jump on and complete that survey, we have it open for about 5 to 6 minutes. As I said, it is for partners, not for our BQ team. And then what we're going to do shortly, we're going to throw back to Rachel to provide a bit of a broad overview of some of the activities that are happening across Biosecurity Queensland. And that's just going to give our staff some time in the back end to collate those results, and then we will come back to those results. So that survey is open now. Hopefully everyone's been able to jump on and access that. And while you are finishing up, Rachel, I am going to throw back to you for the Biosecurity Queensland update, please.
Thanks, KP. So the team has asked me to give you all a general update around BQ. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, this list only sort of scratches the surface of all the stuff's going on, but I am constrained with time. So I'll just give you a high-level update on these matters, knowing for our partners the door is always open if there's more information you need. So the invasive strategy consultation, as many of you would know, we have been consulting on the 2025 to 2030 Queensland Invasive Plants and Animals Strategy. This consultation closed on May the 31st, and my heartfelt thanks to all of those who submitted feedback. We did get a lot of feedback, so our invasive plants and animals team are frantically working through the feedback for that strategy, and there will be more information to come, of course, as we get a clearer picture. Varroa response, as again, I'm sure most of you are aware, Biosecurity Queensland, in conjunction with the Australian Government and the Queensland bee industry, has conducted intensive surveillance at the Port of Brisbane and surrounding areas since the detection of the Varroa mite and that Jacobsonite, not destructor, in February. The teams are led by Mike Reid in our plant biosecurity and product integrity space, located a single Asian honeybee nest and multiple European honeybee nests during the surveillance. All bees collected from the Port of Brisbane hives have tested negative for exotic bee viruses, which is very, very important. And there is a movement control order still in place as a precautionary measure to minimise any potential risk of Varroa mite spread. Moving on to avian influenza in Victoria, I think unfortunately we would all have to be living under a rock to have not seen the media on this incredibly distressing situation for my colleagues in Victoria and of course impacted producers. So the Victorian Government and affected livestock industries are working together to manage an outbreak of high pathogenicity avian influenza on multiple poultry farms with the aim of containing and eradicating the disease as quickly as possible. Testing has confirmed that the detections are not caused by H5 strain of avian influenza that is currently causing concerns in many countries overseas. And we in Queensland, through our animal biosecurity and welfare team, are continuing to encourage Queensland poultry owners to be vigilant and to assure effective biosecurity practices are in place. As well as encouraging the wider community to report anything unusual in terms of bird deaths, particularly wild birds. So an evolving space, but one that I'm really proud to say our team in Queensland with its expertise is leading in to assist our colleagues in Victoria manage that. White spot in New South Wales. New South Wales is continuing to manage white spot syndrome, with the virus having now been detected in wild prawns in the Richmond River during an annual surveillance program. At this time, there is no impact for Queensland, but we are continuing to work very closely with our colleagues across the border. And of course, again, from our animal biosecurity and welfare team, lending them expertise to help them manage this. Fire ants. So talking of working across the border, the National Fire Ant Eradication Program are also collaborating with New South Wales on recent detections. Within Queensland, we are conducting planned eradication treatment in Moreton Bay, Somerset, Lockyer Valley, Southern Downs, Scenic Rim and the Gold Coast, and of course unplanned eradication treatment in northern New South Wales and the Toowoomba region. The program has recently expanded the aerial fleet with cutting-edge drone technology to deliver fire ant treatment faster and safer to areas once inaccessible by helicopters and ground teams. and the program is also using fixed-wing aircraft to scale up our treatment efforts. We've also partnered with the Gold Coast Titans to raise awareness of fire ants and their impacts within the communities. Without this program, I'm sure all our partners are aware, the impact of these ants would be astronomical and catastrophic. Without the program's intervention and efforts so far, fire ants would have spread north to Townsville, west past Longreach and south to Albury by now. There is a lot in the media about fire ants, and I would encourage our partners to always be checking the fire ant website to ensure they're getting the most accurate and up-to-date information. Industry Biosecurity Response Readiness Training. We've just finished our 12th Industry Biosecurity Response Readiness Training session just last week. Over 100 industry peak body staff, elected members or emerging leaders took part in the training sessions, which is amazing. Thanks to all who took part. We will start to look at the potential to run more of these in the first half of next year, because they have been so successful. And our next round of foundational biosecurity training will focus on our colleagues in the local government. National Biosecurity Training Hub. Last week, this hub won a National Emergency Management Award. This initiative, which was spearheaded by through a partnership of Plant Health Australia with the Queensland Government as a seed funding partner, has seen dozens of biosecurity training courses brought together online. If you haven't already, I would strongly encourage all of you to visit the hub and promote it wherever possible. National Biosecurity Symposium. Last but not least, the symposium will be held in our backyard on the Gold Coast in August, which is an amazing opportunity for Queensland Biosecurity. Please consider your attending this event, which looks to be another amazing lineup of biosecurity expertise, as well as a wonderful networking opportunity across the system. So I think now we are ready to go with showing you the survey results, KP.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think the team are just working through those at the moment, so they're not quite ready. It's not a totally automated process to bring you those spider graphs, so they are just working through those now. So one of the other exciting initiatives, Rachel, if I'll just touch on it as well, following on from the symposium, is there is talk at the moment about running a National Biosecurity Week. So there are initial concepts floating around about that. So if that initiative gets off the ground, obviously that will be something right across the biosecurity system nationally that we can get behind, and we'll be sharing that with the partners as that comes to life. So the other thing I've just seen in the chat that the team is posting a whole lot of links in there. So everything from the fire ant site to the National Symposium and how you find out more information about that and the like. So yeah, if you're interested in any of those events, the National Training Hub is amazing. Probably with that one, the two things that our partners can do to assist with promoting that hub is one, promoting the courses that are up there, and there are dozens of courses up there that can be shared. So promoting those courses and promoting the hub as a central location for training would be amazing. But the other thing is this training hub is about bringing all of those courses in centrally and nationally. So if any of the organisations have online training that you think would be worth featuring on that site, please contact Plant Health Australia, and they will step you through the process of profiling those courses online. So that is that's a really exciting opportunity to be able to have that hub centrally available for people to do courses. So I'm just going to check with the team, Rachel, if you've got anything to add about how they're tracking.
And KP, I was just going to say, with the Biosecurity Training Hub, as far as if I remember correctly, most of those courses are free.
All free. So it's all free training courses. Yeah, there are links to paid, I guess, fee for courses opportunities on there. So you can link off to other organisations where you may want to do courses that are fee for service, but the courses that are actually hosted on that site are free to be undertaken. So, so it is a fantastic resource. The training up there that is from all levels of government, industry, and the community-based courses are all accessible through that site. So, yes.
Fantastic.
So I think, Rachel, those survey results should be coming in just a second.
Right.
If anyone
I'm not going to launch into song or interpretive dance for the sake of those who have hung in there with us online. So fear not.
I was just going to say, if anyone's got any questions or comments on anything that you've just raised in your update too, Rachel, we'd be happy to take those now as well.
Okay. So as we can see, we've now got the results of the survey. I personally am having trouble distinguishing the colours, but that may well be maybe my ageing eyes. As we mentioned earlier, we've been undertaking this survey, as you can see, from 2017, and the graph is showing comparisons of the year across those 5 metrics: mutual trust, purpose, role clarity, empowers responsibility, and collaborates. I think that what we've observed with these metrics over time is that they have varied, and I know some of this has been due to external factors in how we've been able to engage with others, with the COVID period being a prime example. What I take away from these results is that we need to continue to have a strong commitment to how we all engage across the biosecurity system and how we work together to move the refreshed strategy forward. So thank you for participating. Personally, on behalf of myself and my leadership team, we take that engagement piece incredibly seriously. So and with a laser focus. So if we are not meeting your expectations in different pockets of our broad network, please don't hesitate to let us know. We've put in a number of initiatives in the 18 months that I've been here to try and make sure that where humanly possible, we are communicating in a timely fashion around what, as you all know, is a very broad range of situations, and some are fast moving and others less so. So again, appreciate you all doing the survey. I'll go away with my team and unpack the results, and we can communicate them to you after the fact as well. You can see them there. There's ups and downs across the board, but it's incredibly valuable feedback for us around how this forum works, and gives us hopefully a kick up the pants if there's areas where we are not meeting your expectation. So I continue to be excited about working with each of you to collectively enhance Queensland's biosecurity system. Over the last 18 months, nothing has become more apparent to me that the success or failure of biosecurity in Queensland is based on the relationships we build, and our ability to support each other and to work collaboratively. And certainly my team, leadership team, and more broadly across BQ, everyone is well aware that engaging and working and collaborating with our partners is everybody's responsibility. And I do hope that you are starting to see some results there. So that is a wrap for our webinar today. We have pulled it together a little bit early than we expected, but I don't think anyone is going to be critical if we give you back 20 minutes of your time. Having said that, if anyone, we haven't got any questions in the chat, which again, I'm not considering unusual in these sorts of forums. It's a bit of an information dump, but please don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions that you wish to raise out of session. Certainly there will be, there is a question in the chat, sorry. Where are we?
Sorry, Rachel, yes, there's one that's just come in around the organic industry. So can you see it there?
So thank you. Thanks, Alexandra. Let me have a chat to the team and come back to you. And I'm more than happy to send the response through to everybody online, Alexandra. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I would like to clarify with the team, to your point, why specific reference to the organic industry was deleted from the draft, because of course we know that the organic industry is A, critical, and B, growing, and I need to unpack that with the team. So Alexandra, question, I'll take that one on notice, and again, more than happy to circulate the response to that to all the partners through our next communications. So thank you for that one. I think that was the only one I missed.
Yeah, that's the only one, Rachel.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you everybody again. We hope that this was of value, both to walk you briefly through the strategy, but also provide you, along with ourselves, with some expertise from Stephen from the Nous group. We look forward to catching up with you again soon. And there will continue to be a lot of communication with regards to the strategy. And we also encourage you to make that a two-way street. Please feel free, if you go away and work with your teams with regards to your actions under the strategy, and you wish to share them so that we can pool those and communicate with other partners about what's happening in your space, please feel free. Otherwise, we are always here to help, so please reach out, and we'll catch you again hopefully very soon.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks everyone for joining us online.
Sorry, I just saw another question from Annie. Annie, again, I'll take that one away and talk with the team, and we can give you quite specific and technical response to that one. Thanks all.
Thank you.